My name is Misty Sklar. I'm the past president of APPI, and this topic could not be more near and dear to my heart. When I was elected as president in 2014, 2015, one of my platforms was to develop a salary survey. And it was through the salary survey that some really interesting findings came out that the wage gap between male and female planners was hugely substantial. Like we're talking $14,000, $15,000 between the average female planner and the average male planner in Alberta. Following that, we worked really hard over the past 2 years to talk about these kind of issues, talk about women in planning, and we just did the salary survey again following we do it biannually every 2 years, and there's actually a decrease in the gap. So I'd like to just recognize that it's events like these and events that promote us talking about these kind of issues that create change. The change is small. It was a 1.5% change in the difference between what male and female planners are making. Previously it was about 7.5%. Now it's about a 6% difference. Over 2 years, that's great. That means that gap can actually close in my lifetime. But it's these kind of events here that are really, really important to helping just share the message and create awareness and make change. So with that, I'm going to get started and introduce our speakers. Our moderator, Councillor Diane Colley-Urquhart, is not going to be able to join us today, but we do have Jyoti Gondek is going to be our moderator for today's session. So just a few things about Jyoti. She's an adjunct professor at the Haskayne School of Business, which I am just registered as a student. I'll be in the class of 19 for the MBA program, so I'll be over there. Jyoti, having worked in both public and private sectors since 1995, has launched her own consulting business, TIC Consulting, in 2000, and has provided strategic research support to clients in the land development and development industry. She holds a PhD in urban sociology, and she's also running for Ward 3 Councillor in the Calgary municipal election, which I think is great. A round of applause for that. That's a huge accomplishment. Thank you. And next we have Diane Hawryluk. She's the Executive Director for Community Planning and Development at the City of Regina, Saskatchewan. She is a regional planning professor with 2 decades of career focused on municipal planning excellence. She has led many large-scale commercial, residential, and industrial developments, and has been a leader in statutory planning preparation, including federal legislation. As a leader in her field, Diane co-wrote the curriculum on rural land use development course for the University of Alberta. She's also been involved in the membership committee of the Canadian Institute of Planners for almost 20 years. And she served as a president for the Saskatchewan Professional Planners Institute and holds a position as vice chair of CIP on the Professional Standards Board. So round of applause. Next we have Gillian Lawrence. She's the general manager of land development for Remington Corporation. Gillian has been with Remington since 2006. Her key responsibilities there include land acquisition, due diligence, concept planning, land use and subdivision for major development projects in Calgary and elsewhere throughout Alberta. Prior to joining Remington, she spent 18 years working in municipalities in Alberta, including 10 years at the City of Calgary, and held a variety of leadership roles there, including roles within planning and real estate departments, as well as the city manager's office. Quarry Park is an acclaimed 385-acre mixed-use community and is part of the key projects that she's worked on since joining Remington. So, round of applause. And we have Kathy Oberg. She's a managing partner at B&A Group. And as a managing partner, Kathy brings over 20 years of experience to land use and planning. In conjunction with her master's degree in urban planning, Kathy also has her bachelor's degree in environmental design, architecture, landscape architecture, and urban planning. She brings to the firm experience in urban planning and urban design and architectural design, subdivision design, and land use planning. Kathy's experience lies in the preparation and management of projects ranging from subdivisions to site design to outline plans and land use redesignations. Her strengths include strong relationships with city administration, city council, and her ability to communicate effectively with her clients, community associations, and affected stakeholders. So, round of applause. Excellent. So that's enough about me talking. I'm going to pass the mic to Jyoti, and she's going to get the party started.
Thank you very much, Misty. Thank you for the great introductions, and thank you everybody for coming out today. I appreciate that you were able to find the room. I got lost a couple of times trying to get here. So this is going to be a great session, and what I'd like to do is just start things off by establishing a particular tone with your permission. So to start off, it is Father's Day today, and I think it's important to acknowledge that there are probably dads here who are taking time away from their families, not to mention kids and partners and wives who have probably planned an alternative Father's Day just so that we could be here today. If you're like me and your dad or any other man in your life has had a significant impact on who you are today, I think it's important to make sure that this session is about how we collectively boost women's roles in society. It's meant to be a very inclusive conversation and not something that's going to be divisive. Next, I know it's a planning conference, but could we talk about city building rather than just planning? And I say that because I am actually a sociologist. I'm sort of an interloper in your planning world today, and I appreciate you letting me into your cool kids club. So with your permission, let's talk about women in city building. How does that sound? Yeah? Okay, good. Everybody here good with that? Okay, perfect. Okay, so what we're going to do to start things off, we are going to talk to you a little bit about who we are and why we believe in this and what it is that brought us into this profession. And I have to say that I have it's sort of a crazy little path that I got into and why I have this passion for city building. I don't think I ever really realized what it was that I wanted to do until I started campaigning with a candidate in a municipal election in 2007. And as I started getting out in my neighborhoods and knocking on doors and talking to people and realizing that we were all living our lives in very different ways and the city was shaping how effectively we could live those lives, I hadn't really considered that urbanization has a big impact on us, on all of us. And the role that women play in urbanization is sometimes a little bit muted. We don't always get heard because there's other things that take a precedent, like how we can move people and goods quickly down a road, or what land use is most appropriate for a piece of land. Rather than thinking about how we're living our lives, we're looking at technicalities. So I, for one, wanted to be someone that led the charge to change that, and let's look at cities as an intersection between people and place. So that's how I got here. So I'm going to pass this over to my colleagues, and we'll start with Kathy. Let's hear your story.
Okay, hello there. I'm from a small town, which gets very big in the summer, in northwestern Ontario. And I think back when I was trying to figure out what do I want to do, what do I want to be, it was very limited. I think the conversation and the dialogue back then was very limited. So I was headstrong, I'm going to be an interior designer. And there was, I think, 2 schools at the time, Ryerson and Manitoba. And I remember my father going, I'm going to take you down to Toronto. I want you to see Ryerson. I want you to see exactly where it's located. And so we went for a trip, and I got to see a big city. I had grown up north of Toronto for a few years, but younger years. And I remember him walking me around, ex-cop, look at this, look at that. And I thought, oh my gosh, is this really what I want to do? Ultimately, I didn't get accepted. I got accepted at U of M. And at that point, we got to go and explore as a year of arts. And I started that interior design path and then went, ooh, I might want to do architecture. So by the time I got into the program, it was very interesting. It's funny how you fall into the right place, the right scale. We did some urban planning studios, and I went, oh, this feels right. I don't want to be 2x4s and 4x6s and, be restricted to a parcel. So I found that desire right there. I finished up at U of M and then moved out to Calgary. Wanted to get a little bit of experience before I did a master's, and I did a master's out here. I have to say I'm a mean checkout girl. I did that for 9 years at Safeway, so I can, to this day, be the fastest one through the self-checkout line. I also can carry very many plates, through a restaurant if need be without dropping anything. So ended up at U of C, did my master's there, and loved Calgary. Thought I have to stay here. There's lots to be done. I worked at the city for 2 years as I was finishing up my master's back then, and I appreciate now how we try to get students actively involved in learning, and it's not just the conceptual world. So I spent 2 years at the city, and at the time, planners were plentiful, and there weren't a lot of positions. I saw a position at Brown and Associates, looking for someone with an undergrad in architecture and a master's in planning, and I went, oh my gosh, that's me. And I did the move, and I've been there 17 and a half years, love every bit of it. It's a different side. You can definitely have different conversations on that side. I am a mom. I've got a loving husband. I've got 2 kids, 10 and 13, who most days I love. Some days I don't, but most days I love. I sit at a hockey rink. I am a short order cook. I drive kids around, and I try to do great things in the city. So that's me.
Hi, it's great to see everyone out here today. Just thinking, I'm thinking about my dad today, who's no longer with us, but he was definitely a great influence. I'm the eldest of 3 daughters, and it was really my dad and my mom who, as I was growing up in Red Deer, said we could do absolutely everything and anything that we wanted. And we grew up in a small town. I lived in a neighborhood where I could run around, go to the playground. My dad would come out the back door, whistle, and we'd be 4 blocks away, and we'd come home. And one of the great things that I think led me down the path into this profession, and I too have a Bachelor of Arts in Sociology and a Master's in Planning from U of T, was that my dad, in my 15th year, took the summer off from his law practice, and we got on a plane and went off to the UK for the entire summer, and toured around in a van and spent a lot of time in the City of London and other places in Scotland. And that was my first really big trip. We had traveled elsewhere, but I just fell in love with the city. And again, my parents kind of gave me free will. We spent a couple weeks in London, and my sister Jennifer and I were able to get on the bus and do our own thing, go to Harrods, check it all out without any parental supervision. Don't really think that would happen a lot today. So we were given a lot of freedoms, and we were encouraged to pursue what we wanted to. I studied at the U of C and moved to Toronto, moved to the big city. My path was I'm going to say kind of a bit of a zigzag. I really got interested in urban studies because of Dr. Harry Hiller at U of C in sociology. And I did an honors thesis, and what I was interested in was seniors housing and how seniors not only interacted within the building they lived in, but how they interacted with the rest of the community. And when I did my master's degree at U of T, I was very interested in demographics and the whole concept. One of my favorite books at the time was Boom, Bust, and Echo. I was very interested in things like workplace daycares in the Spadina area for immigrant women who are working in some of the garment district. And so my path into planning really started out on more social planning field, and I worked in social planning at the City of Red Deer. I was hired into the social planning department at the time with the City of Calgary, moved into the planning and building department, and I had a couple of really important sponsors. One of them was Richard Parker. I worked with him very closely, but probably the most important sponsor was Jeff Fielding, who's the current city manager. And I was his 2IC in the department when he was creating it, and then he got seconded down to the city manager's office and put me in as acting director of development and building approvals at the time. And I'll tell you, that pissed a lot of men who had been in the department off. And I frankly at the time wasn't sure I could do the job. I believe I did do a good job. And that inspired me to go on and do other things that challenged me. I've been at Remington for 11 years, and it is a great family-owned business. It is hugely male-dominated, like most of the industry. But I will say that while I don't have children, I was a caregiver for my father before he died, supporting my mom. I was a caregiver to an aunt who lived in Toronto, who battled cancer for 5 years, and that company gave me the flexibility to work remotely in all those circumstances. So that's kind of my story.
Good morning. So my story, it's similar to Gillian's actually, because I'm the youngest of 4 girls in my family, and my story kind of revolves around my father too. Similar to Gillian, my father and mother just really wanted to promote independent women that went out and did things. They spent time traveling the world, very cultured. They lived in Venezuela. My second oldest sister was born there, so they always promoted traveling and understanding how great the world is and how great cities are and those sorts of things. So like Gillian, I got sent to Paris when I was 16 for a month and got to run around Paris on the metro by myself with some friends and those sorts of things. But in school, high school, thinking, what am I going to do? Planning was never on my radar. Municipal government wasn't on my radar. It's really something we need to get into the systems about how important city planning is and municipal government and just development in general. So when I was going into university, I was like, I got to make some money. I like money. So I was going to become a stockbroker. I thought I could make all this money. Thank God I didn't go down that path because I'd be broke, I think. But what ended up happening was I couldn't get into commerce right away, so I got into arts and science. And in my first year, I took a human geography course, and that changed my life. It was just that connection of, wow, this is awesome, like really starting to ask questions about how things develop and why and all those great things. I've always been a person that wants to solve problems and make things better. So I remember coming home and sitting down with my dad, and I said, Dad, I'm going into city planning. I'm not going to be going into commerce. This is my plan. And he looked at me and he went, what the hell are you doing? There's no jobs in planning. And I'm like, no, Dad, there is. We have a family cottage in Prince Albert National Park. And I said, Dad, no, seriously, like Waskesiu, they'll need a planner. Like there's things going wrong in that town. We need to do things. And so anyway, so he's like, okay, I'm only paying for school for 4 years. So if this goes south, you're paying for anything else. And so I graduated, and when I graduated from U of S, there was really no jobs when I graduated. It was all contract work, which was really to my benefit, because my first job right out of school was with the province and had a contract there for 3 months, and then had to make a decision because there wasn't any jobs. So I actually did get into commerce, and I went back to school, and after my first semester, I got a call from the province of Saskatchewan asking me back, but my first job was in Regina, and they asked me to go to Saskatoon. So I did. I worked in Saskatoon, and then I moved. That contract ended, and I got another contract right away with the town of Martinsville. And then lo and behold, so this is about 2 years after I graduated, I got the head planner job for Waskesiu to write the federal legislation for the new town site plan for Waskesiu. So I remember sitting on the deck saying, see, Dad, I told you Waskesiu needed a planner. So that was really good. And then from there, again, it was contracts. So I moved around a lot. I moved to Yorkton, and then I moved to Prince Albert, where I was a senior planner and had great opportunities because the director at the time got ill, and I was given the opportunity to take on some pretty large-scale developments. And then took my very first hot vacation to Barbados and thought, wow, I'd like to work on an island. And the next year I got a job working for the government of Bermuda and lived there for 3.5 years. Prairie girl, learning about ports and harbors and all these things, but it was a great experience. And then moved to Alberta, actually. I was here some staff. My old staff came. And was here for 5 years working for Mountain View County, and then I moved to Regina. And I think throughout my career, the support of my family and my mentors throughout the years just encouraging me to take those opportunities, to take the risk and really put myself out there, because it is hard being young, right out of school and moving to, at that time I grew up in Saskatoon, moving to Regina, and just being open to that and always having the support. I too had a lot of mentors around the way that we'll talk about a little bit later that really supported me, but it is about that network of family, your immediate family and your friends and your colleagues that hold you up. So I've been very blessed in my career.
Thank you, everyone. And it's interesting. We've had a lot of conversations about what we're going to do on this panel and what each of us would talk about, but we didn't share our history. And it's kind of funny because I'm a prairie girl too. I grew up in Manitoba. We moved from London, England to Winnipeg, Manitoba because Dad looked at a map and said, that looks central. That could be a great idea. So, we grew up in Manitoba, and then my husband and I moved out to Alberta back in 1996, and we've been in Calgary since 97. But it's funny because my childhood was a bit more sheltered. I was an only child. I didn't have a bunch of siblings, and my parents were always very concerned about me, and they didn't want me to get hurt. They didn't want me to get, stolen by somebody. So I don't think I would have ever been able to take the subway or the bus on my own. And the other thing I encountered was being the only Punjabi kid. Growing up in a little town in Manitoba was a very strange experience because growing up, you see the world around you, you don't see what you look like. So to me, I was just like everybody else, and to everybody else, I was very different from them. But I gotta give full kudos to that little town. No one ever treated me any differently. It was a wonderful experience. Things got a little bit rockier when I moved to Winnipeg. There was definitely discrimination and things were a little bit different, but you know what? Made me who I am, made me tougher. And that's one of the things that I do today is I look for opportunities to mentor young women who are from other ethnic backgrounds, who are trying to find their way in the world, looking a little bit different than everybody else for two reasons, gender and color. Let's just call it what it is. So I've looked for a lot of opportunities to be a mentor and pass along some of my experiences. Let's talk a little bit about the experiences that you've had as folks on this panel in terms of providing the next generation the support they need to get into this field, and reflect a little bit about the key influences and supports that you received that got you here today. And tell us about the roadblocks you encountered that you'd like to take away for next generations. And we'll start with Gillian.
I do a lot of volunteering in my life, and a couple of key things that I guess relate to empowering women and ensuring that there's diversity in our workplace and equality. My first experience was getting involved with the Famous Five Foundation. So you probably hopefully all know what the person's case is. And the Famous Five wanted to recognize that monumental time when women became persons under the law. And if you head down the mall when you have a bit of free time, you'll see the monument of the Famous Five. And it's not that long ago that we actually became persons. I became involved with the organization and ultimately became chairman, good God. And we spent a lot of time with luncheons where women are able to tell their stories, their personal stories about not only the senior positions they've achieved in their particular professions, but how they balance that with the other aspects of their life. We also focus a lot on young girls and ensuring that starting at a very young age that they feel empowered to do whatever they want to do. Probably the most significant thing for me right now is my involvement with CREW, and that's Commercial Real Estate Women. You'll see a booth out in the hallway, and I joined the local chapter, CREW Calgary, in 2006, and it was a brand new organization at the time. I got involved, and I am past president in 2015 of the organization, and that organization is a very strong organization that supports commercial real estate by advancing women in the profession. And it's not just women who are planners, it's the full range of professions that relate to commercial real estate. This year, I am on the international board. So CREW is made up of 75 chapters and affiliations, primarily in North America, but we have a CREW UK as well launched. There are 10,500 members, and I feel very privileged to be on the international board. And we do things similar to what Misty mentioned. We do research benchmark studies every 5 years. We do white papers on the off years. This year we've looked at gender bias, unconscious bias, and we're really there to advance women in the industry. Barriers. You know, as I mentioned, I work for a very male-dominated company. I'm one of 2 more senior women in the company. That said, my company has supported me in taking on the role on the international board, which is a lot of time. They have financially supported the organization and so on. So it's not uncommon for me, and I'm sure this happens to virtually every woman in this room, to oftentimes be the only woman sitting around the boardroom table. And generally speaking, I don't think about that, but it's a fact. And, you know, as far as mentoring goes, I've actually met in the last week with 3 young women who are wanting to seek growth in their profession, and that's probably for me one of the most important things that I can do at this stage in my career. I think it's really important to support young women in achieving what they want to do, to connect them with other people that I know in the company. Sorry, in the profession.